Okay, so get ready
Yeah.
because today we are going to dive deep into the fascinating world of neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
We are going to break down how adaptable our brains really are and what that means for like you and me as individuals.
It's really fascinating, this topic. For
Yeah.
a long time, people thought that, like your brain was kind of fixed. Like,
Right.
you reach a certain age and that's it.
All downhill from there.
Yeah, you're done. You can't really change, but
Right.
that's not really the case at all.
So it's not even just like growing new brain cells.
Right. It's not just about like adding more
Right.
brain cells or neurons. Neurogenesis is definitely part of it.
Well,
Neuroplasticity is really focused on the connections
okay.
between those brain cells. So how those connections are
Got it.
changing and adapting.
So it's not like building new houses in a city. It's more like creating better roads
Yeah.
and connections between the ones that are already there.
That's a great analogy. The more you use certain pathways in your brain, the stronger those connections get.
Okay.
It's like a well-traveled highway, gets wider and smoother over time.
Right.
And on the flip side, the pathways you don't use can actually get pruned away.
Oh, wow.
Just like a city might decide to, close off a neglected alleyway.
Right.
It makes the brain super efficient.
So is there like one person who we can thank for like discovering this, or was it just like a slow?
There was one guy who really kind of started to challenge this idea of a fixed adult brain.
Oh, cool.
Back in the early 1900s, there was this guy, Santiago Ramon y Cajal,
Okay.
and he was a neuroscientist. And he was already observing back then that the brain could still change,
Wow.
even after we reach adulthood. So he kind of laid the groundwork for what we know now as neuroplasticity,
Okay.
even though the term itself wasn't really used.
Wow, that's amazing to think about that.
Yeah.
It's so long ago.
Yeah.
So how does all this rewiring happen? Like, what are the actual mechanisms behind it?
So there are two main types of neuroplasticity at play:
Okay.
structural and functional.
Okay.
Structural plasticity is when you actually change the physical connections in your brain.
Got it.
It's like building a brand new highway to connect different parts of the city.
Okay. I'm picturing that.
Yeah.
What about functional plasticity?
So functional plasticity is more about shifting responsibilities.
Okay.
So imagine like one part of the city taking over a task
Okay.
from another area that's not as efficient.
Okay.
So the underlying infrastructure might stay the same,
Right.
but the way it's used has changed.
So we've just rerouted the traffic to like a more efficient highway, even though we didn't actually build a new one.
Exactly.
Okay. I think I'm getting the picture here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But why should I care about this? Like, what does this mean for me personally?
Well, this is where it gets really exciting.
Okay.
One of the biggest benefits is that it makes learning new things easier.
Oh, wow.
So your brain is literally better at making those connections and adapting to new information. And it goes beyond just book smarts. This applies to, physical skills,
Okay.
creative pursuits, anything you set your mind to.
So the more I challenge my brain, the more plastic it becomes and the easier it is to learn new things.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
And it's not just about learning. Neuroplasticity also plays a huge role in recovering from brain injuries,
Really?
like strokes, for example.
Wow.
The brain can actually reroute signals around damaged areas, allowing for a really remarkable level of healing.
That's so hopeful. Like, it's like there are built-in detours in our brain.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it.
Wow.
And then think about the implications for mental health.
Okay.
A lot of therapies for conditions like depression and anxiety,
Yeah.
they work by harnessing the power of neuroplasticity.
Interesting.
They help you strengthen the positive pathways in your brain,
Okay.
making it easier to manage those conditions over time.
So it's like training your brain to be
Exactly. You're training your brain
Wow.
towards more positive patterns of thought and behavior.
So this means that I could like rewire my brain to do anything. Like, are there any limits to neuroplasticity?
Well, neuroplasticity is incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
It's not magic.
Right.
Some areas of the brain have very specialized roles that are difficult to replicate elsewhere.
Yep.
For example, the hippocampus,
Yeah.
which is crucial for memory formation.
Right.
That's one area where damage can be really difficult to fully overcome.
So like if someone has damage to their hippocampus,
Yeah,
they might have trouble
exactly.
forming new memories.
Exactly.
Wow.
They might have difficulties, remembering recent events or learning new information.
Right.
And their brain might try to compensate, but that specific area has a very unique function.
So there are some limitations, but even with those limitations, the possibilities still seem incredible.
Yeah.
So what can I do to actually boost my brain plasticity?
Well, that's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's where we can all take an active role in shaping our brains.
Yeah.
Remember, we talked about the brain being like a city. Well, imagine creating an enriched environment for your brain,
Okay.
just like you would for a thriving city.
So what does an enriched environment for my brain look like?
Well, think about things like travel learning, a musical instrument,
Okay.
dancing,
Yeah.
or even reading fiction.
Wow.
These activities all challenge your brain in different ways, keeping it adaptable and engaged.
So it's not just about like traditional learning, it's about
Yeah.
like new experiences.
Exactly.
Okay.
The more you step outside your comfort zone and challenge your brain,
Right.
the more you're promoting that adaptability.
I like that.
And there's one more crucial element, sleep.
I knew you were going to say sleep.
Of course.
I've always heard that it's important, but I'm curious, like, how does it actually tie into all of this?
Sleep is much more than just rest.
Okay.
It's a time when your brain gets to work consolidating memories
Okay.
and strengthening those neural connections we've been talking about.
Okay.
Like your brain's construction crew, getting busy while you're snoozing away
So it's actually...
during sleep dendrites,
Yeah.
which receive signals from other neurons.
Okay.
They grow and branch out,
Oh.
making those pathways more robust.
So getting enough sleep actually helps my brain build a better network?
Exactly.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
And what about exercise?
Yeah. Exercise. I know it's good for my body, but how does it affect my brain?
You're right. Exercise isn't just good for your heart and muscles.
Right.
It also triggers the release of a protein called BDNF,
Okay.
brain-derived neurotrophic factor,
Okay.
which is essentially fertilizer for your brain.
Wow.
BDNF helps your brain grow new pathways and connections.
So if I'm not exercising, I'm depriving my brain of essential nutrients.
You could say that.
Wow. Okay. I need to get moving more.
Yeah.
We talked about meditation being beneficial, but I'm curious, like, can it actually change my brain?
The impact of meditation on the brain is really remarkable.
Okay.
Studies have shown that regular meditation can actually change the thickness of gray matter
Wow.
in certain areas of your brain, particularly those related to stress management and attention.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So we're talking about like rewiring our brains at a very fundamental level.
Yeah.
I'd love to see it in action. Can you give me some real world examples of how neuroplasticity plays out in people's lives?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Let's start with stroke recovery.
Okay.
So the brain's ability to reroute around damaged areas after a stroke.
Yeah.
It's a real testament to its resilience.
Right.
You know, think about physical therapy after a stroke.
Okay.
It often involves a lot of repetition of specific tasks.
Okay.
And this repetition helps the brain rewire itself.
Got it.
New pathways are strengthened to
Okay.
compensate for those lost functions.
So it's like the brain is saying, okay, that route's closed. Let's find a detour.
Exactly.
I like that.
And what about mental health?
Yeah.
How does neuroplasticity actually play out in something like depression or anxiety? Think about therapy, like creating new habits,
Okay.
thought, and behavior.
Yeah.
Imagine you're walking through a forest. And at first, you know, it might be tough
Yeah.
to forge a new path.
Okay.
But the more you walk it, the clearer and easier it becomes.
Right.
Eventually, that new path might even become like your preferred route.
So with consistent effort, we can retrain our brains
Right.
to be less anxious or
Yeah.
less prone to negative thought.
It doesn't have to be just formal therapy either.
Oh, okay.
Learning new skills,
Yeah.
connecting with loved ones,
Right.
even spending time in nature.
Okay.
All of these can contribute to building those positive pathways.
I like that.
It's about creating an environment that supports mental well-being,
Right.
which in turn promotes healthy neuroplasticity.
So are there any other like really cool examples?
Speaking of amazing examples, did you read about phantom limb pain?
Yes. That one really blew my mind.
That one really illustrates the adaptability of the brain.
Can you explain how neuroplasticity is involved in phantom limb pain?
So phantom limb pain is this phenomenon where someone who has lost a limb continues to feel sensations, often pain, in that missing limb.
Oh.
Even though the limb is gone, the brain still kind of perceives it.
It seems counterintuitive. How can you feel something that's not there?
Well, the brain's map of the body,
Okay.
which is located in the sensory cortex,
Okay.
it's incredibly plastic.
Right.
When a limb is amputated,
Yeah.
that area of the brain
Okay.
that corresponded to that limb,
Right.
it doesn't just sit idle.
Okay.
It starts to rewire itself.
Okay.
And sometimes those signals get crossed,
Right.
leading to those phantom sensations.
So the brain is trying to make sense of the missing input.
Yeah,
And it just creates its own.
exactly.
That's incredible. and a little spooky.
Yeah, it is.
So we've been talking about all these amazing things that neuroplasticity allows for, but
Yeah.
what about age?
Uh,
Is all downhill after a certain point?
it's true that children's brains are incredibly plastic.
Right.
They're forming tons of new connections every day,
Yeah.
which is why early childhood is so crucial for development.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that adults can't keep their brains adaptable.
Okay.
It might not be as easy
Right.
or as fast as it was when we were kids,
Yeah.
but it's definitely possible.
So I don't have to resign myself to like mental decline as I get older.
No, not at all.
That's a relief.
The more we challenge ourselves
Mhm.
mentally and physically, the more we're promoting healthy brain plasticity,
Yeah.
no matter our age.
I like that.
Think of it like keeping those mental muscles flexed
Right.
and ready to adapt.
Okay. This has been incredibly eye-opening.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic.
We've learned what neuroplasticity is,
Right.
why it matters,
Yeah.
and how to encourage it. So what does all of this mean for the person listening right now?
It means that your brain, the one you're using to listen to this right now,
Right.
is not a static thing.
Right.
It's constantly evolving
Yeah.
based on what you do, what you learn,
Wow.
even how you think.
So instead of thinking, I'm just not good at this,
Yeah.
I can shift my thinking to,
Yeah.
my brain might not be wired for this yet,
Right.
but with practice, it can change.
You got it. That's the power of a growth mindset.
I like that.
And it's something that neuroplasticity really beautifully supports.
Yeah, it really does challenge that idea that we're like stuck with our brains the way they are.
Exactly.
Like knowing this is incredibly motivating.
It is this awareness of how plastic your brain is.
Yeah.
It can be a real game changer.
Right.
You have more control over your brain than you might think.
I like that.
You can actually shape it through your choices, your habits, your experiences.
It makes me think about all the times I've told myself like, oh, I'm just not a math person
Right.
or I'm terrible with names.
Exactly.
Maybe I just need to rewire those pathways.
That's the spirit.
Yeah.
It's not about being limited by, how your brain is wired today.
Right.
It's about the potential you have to change it tomorrow.
Right.
This whole conversation has me thinking, like, if I could intentionally train my brain, I'd probably focus on, like, my mindfulness practice.
Oh, that's interesting. Why mindfulness specifically?
Well, we talked about the research showing its impact on the brain.
Right.
The potential benefits like stress reduction, enhanced focus,
Yeah.
even increased compassion.
Wow.
Like they're too good to ignore.
Right.
I think it'd be incredible to really cultivate that way of being.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
It's like you're training your brain for inner peace.
exactly.
For me, I think I'd focus on language learning.
Oh, wow.
I always wanted to be fluent in another language.
Yeah.
And now I'm even more motivated knowing that my brain can actually rewire itself
Absolutely.
to make room for those new sounds and grammar rules.
That's a fantastic goal.
Thanks.
And it aligns perfectly with neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
Challenging your brain with language learning, especially later in life,
Right.
is like a workout for those neural pathways.
Well, I'm ready to get started on my brain workout.
Me too.
This deep dive has been amazing. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of my brain and its potential.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
Likewise.
And for you listening, remember, your brain is a work in progress.
Right.
Never stop learning, growing, and exploring.
Because when it comes to your brain, the possibilities really are limitless.
Absolutely.